Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. It's me, Addy, again, and I hope you guys are doing alright. As always, I'm here to give you guys my initial impressions of the latest games that we stream over on Twitch, and this time I want to talk a little bit about Starfield, which we played for about 5 to 6 hours last night on stream. Now, Starfield is a game that I was looking forward to and genuinely enthusiastic to play, given that it's Bethesda's new IP after who knows how long, and considering the fact that they've made some of my most enjoyable and memorable gaming experiences possible through various titles within their Fallout and Elder Scrolls franchises, the latter of which is home to not just my favorite game by the company, but also my 5th favorite game of all time, period, that being Oblivion. Now, these games all have one thing in common. They offer vast, unique open worlds to explore with a myriad of RPG elements, enabling you to create your very own character from the ground up and tailor their adventure in a way that you see fit through countless quest, combat, and dialogue scenarios. Each Bethesda RPG will maintain its own distinct identity, but will feature some variation of that formula for the most part. And Starfield is certainly no exception to that, at least from my limited experience with the game so far. It doesn't just repeat that familiar approach to open world RPGs, but it is a straight up Bethesda game through and through. If you gave someone who's well versed with these games a controller and asked them if they could identify who the developers were behind this game, I guarantee you they'd be able to do so very quickly, since Starfield retains most if not all of the trademark elements that have made Bethesda's games so identifiable over the years, such as NPCs moving and reacting to things in funny ways, every landmark big and small being separated by a loading screen, and traversing through large swaths of land from unknown location to unknown location with epic musical stings that play when your character levels up. I've even heard from some other players that certain bugs that have pervaded Bethesda's games since forever are still in Starfield. All this is to say that Starfield, for better or worse depending on your expectations, is a classic Bethesda open world experience. If you're a fan of Bethesda's games and their current way of approaching open world game design, then you'll probably enjoy Starfield as well. Everything in the first 5 to 6 hours that I played was pretty much exactly what I expected to find in this game, since I didn't approach this with the notion that it was going to be a truly revolutionary package for both the company's way of doing things and the open world spectrum as a whole. However, if you go into Starfield with the idea that this is going to be what games like, say, Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild were to the open world genre, where they reinvigorated many fatigued aspects of it, then you're probably going to be disappointed. This game is basically what you get if you took Fallout and put it in space. And I know that's putting it bluntly, but I can't think of a more apt way to describe it personally. It's like if they put Fallout into space but made it look significantly prettier and more expansive, of course. And I think that, as always, Bethesda nailed the aesthetic that they were going for with Starfield. During trailers and interviews, they consistently mentioned an intriguing visual style that they wanted to infuse this game with that they called NASA Punk, which derives heavy inspiration from NASA's technology and robotics to construct a futuristic spacefaring civilization. And I love the look of it, particularly when it comes to a lot of the weaponry here. They really do look awesome. And so far, I'm not just impressed by the visual direction of the game, but also the fidelity of everything in this package as well. It seems to me like Bethesda really did put in the effort to updating the hell out of their long-running creation engine, which, based on my first impressions here, still seems to have a good bit of mileage left based on what it's been capable of rendering in this game. The textures so far, particularly on the weapons and character models, really are mind-blowing. And even though they may not be the best looking models I've ever seen by any means, for a Bethesda game, they really are a massive step up and make me feel excited when I think of what the inevitable Elder Scrolls 6 will look like whenever that ends up being released. And hell, even some of the animations really stood out to me. Compared to Bethesda's previous games, the characters here seem a lot less stiff and robotic, despite the fact that they may end up giving in to their inherent jankiness at times. Performance is a bit here and there, however, and I feel like this game does need a couple patches to iron that stuff out, unless the community sweeps in with mods as it always does, and I'm sure they already have for this game. For the most part, performance is fine, and I did get away with a pretty stable 60 frames per second on PC when I was in a majority of this game's areas, specifically some of the interior levels when there was a lot less to render, but otherwise there were a lot of sporadic frame drops, particularly when I was roaming around outdoors. And this was even with me running specs that went well beyond what the developers recommended for this game. Another small critique I have with Starfield so far is the menuing. I'm still not entirely used to navigating through the game's various interfaces, which feature a plethora of maps and other character screens, which is understandable that they're all there considering the breadth of this game, but I just feel like the developers could have made bindings or shortcuts that made sense for a lot of what you have to access in this game, which currently seems to be a bit of a pain to sift through. And within that realm, one feature that's always been important to me that's weirdly missing from this game is a dungeon map, which was of tremendous help when it came to clearing out dungeons and seeing how much there was left to do in those locations in previous games like Skyrim, for example. This made it tough for me to know what areas I'd been to and whether or not I was roaming around in circles in this one particular space station I was exploring last night, which was kind of a bummer and a headache. But now for the other stuff. So when it comes to the exploring, combat, RPG elements, and all of the gameplay stuff in general, I feel as if right now I can pretty confidently say that I'm having a great time with all of it. Gunplay feels satisfying, the game has a pretty solid character creator, I like how the leveling system works with you having to put skill points into new perks that you then need to accomplish challenges for in order to get new ranks, and also hopping from planet to planet despite them being separated via loading screens. All of it is a pretty damn good time. Some cool things worth pointing out. One is the lockpicking system, which is probably the one thing that they've overhauled the most, if I'm being honest, since it isn't the same old system of having to slowly turn a pick with the right stick like in Fallout or Skyrim to open pretty much any lock in the game, regardless of its difficulty. Here you have to carefully decide how to crack each layer of a lock with a certain degree of strategy, and you can't just pick any difficulty of lock you want. You need to get the skill required for that first. And I felt that this was a nice little change. Another thing that stood out is the persuasion mechanic in dialogue, which now relies on a series of attempts that you have to make of varying options in the dialogue and difficulty levels in order to try and sway someone's mind, the success of which depends on your character build. Space combat was executed pretty nicely here too. It feels a lot like No Man's Sky, at least to me personally, but I feel like it's a lot better, less clunky, and also features a pretty nice mechanic where you can allocate specific amounts of energy on the fly to certain parts of your ship, such as the shields, cannons, and engines. There was this one really cool segment where I had to sneak past other enemy ships. That's right, you can do stealth as your spaceship, not just your character. And in order to fly under the radar, I had to zero out all of my energy being given to every system in my ship, besides the engines of course, into which I could only put in 2 to 3 notches of energy in order to move very slowly to go undetected. I thought this whole concept was pretty dang awesome. Granted, you guys, the game hasn't truly clicked for me yet, if that makes sense. While I can definitely acknowledge that in the grand scheme of things, I'm having fun with Starfield so far, I still haven't reached the point that anyone who's poured countless hours into a Bethesda game will know about, where you just get it and can't put the controller down. This may have to do with the fact that as I've gotten older, I've started to generally enjoy open world games a little less and appreciate linearity a little more. Not due to any fault of their own, of course, but rather because I typically feel overwhelmed than excited nowadays when I see a game with so much immensity. Another thing worth pointing out before I sign off here for today is that I haven't, of course, played far enough into the game yet to form a solid opinion on its story or any other noteworthy aspect of it that I'm aware of but haven't experienced yet, such as the 1000 procedurally generated planets thing. Pretty much the extent of my gameplay last night was doing the first couple introductory missions, getting to the first major city planet, and wandering around our very own moon and shooting space pirates for a bit. But based on the narrative premise so far, I can say that I'm not interested in seeing where this story goes. And based on my first couple hours, I can't lie to you guys and say that I'm not enjoying Starfield. I'm looking forward to continuing this game down the line and potentially making a classic review video like I normally do for the channel once we end up finishing the game, whenever that ends up being the case, given its scale and the sheer volume of other games that there are to get through. But yeah, those are my initial impressions, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please do be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you want to catch my live playthrough and reactions to Starfield, make sure you head over to twitch.tv/irritableindian and drop a follow over there. Anyways guys, stay happy, stay healthy, stay positive, and as always, keep on keeping on.